Do you still enjoy preparing a sermon?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I mean, almost always. I mean, there are times where it's difficult or you get a little bit stuck, but yeah, most of the time I just think, holy smokes, I can't believe I get to do this. It's great.
Welcome back to the Preaching Through podcast. Today's episode is all about something that should pique your interest. It's preaching through efficient sermon prep. We recently did a training day, and it was how to prepare a sermon in 8 hours or less. And that's a little bit of a fungible number.
It's an arbitrary number.
Yeah, it's an arbitrary number, but more or less how to get your sermon prep process in a predictable, controllable state so that you can predict how long it's going to take and do it in a efficient manner over the long haul.
Well, the reason you want to do that is so that you have time to do all the other things, right? Every pastor we talk to is like, well, I do more than preach, right? Like people will joke, what's it like to just work one day a week? And it's like, if they only knew. I mean, all the things that you have to do. And especially, and really, I was about to say, especially those in smaller churches or solo pastors, but it's true all the time. I mean, there's just always more to do than you have time to do it. And so there's nothing magical or right about 8 hours of sermon prep. But if you're spending 8 hours of sermon prep instead of 15 hours of sermon prep, well, that's 7 hours a week that you're now having back available to lead other things, to grow other things, to invest in other things, to shepherd other people. Like that's pretty valuable time that over the course of a year adds up significantly.
The goal isn't just to shave down, like the goal actually is not to shave down the amount of time, although that's one of the benefits. The goal is to come up with a process that allows you to be effective, faithful to the scriptures, fruitful in your ministry.
Yeah, there you go.
There we go.
Love it.
But also doesn't make the sermon prep process feel like a grind. Back in 2023, it might have been, we were getting ready to do the first Preaching Lab. You had said, I was talking with a guy. I was like, hey man, like you've been preaching full time now. Like, how's it going? And he's like, I hate it.
Yeah.
Like, I just hate it. It's a grind to put together a sermon every week. And it's like, you don't want any part of your life to be like that, especially one where it's like, you probably dreamed about being able to do this. Like, it is a privilege.
There are a lot of people though, I like to ask guys who preach, do you enjoy the preparation or the delivery more, or do you enjoy them about equally? And I'd say of all the people I've asked, most people say, I really enjoy both. But there certainly are some who say, I really enjoy the preparation more than the delivery, or I really enjoy preaching it more than the studying and the preparing. And so I imagine that plenty of people listening are like, yeah, sometimes I like it, but sometimes it's just a real grind. And that's true even for me. I mean, I do like it. It is sometimes also a grind. And I want to just try to do it as efficiently as I can, not because I'm trying to like make it cheap, but I want to go, what's a really high quality sermon in as short of amount of time as possible? If I can do that, then that frees me up to do a lot of other stuff. And so, yeah, thinking through what are some strategies for being more efficient in our sermon prep, I think that's time well spent.
You've got a baseball background.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of guys. I remember, if you're not into baseball, please just tolerate this for a few minutes. But
Dave and I are both baseball fans.
We are baseball fans. There was a player here in Arizona. His name was Mark Reynolds. The dude would just pound the ball, but he struck out at a rate that was just almost exponentially more than other players. And I do think baseball has gone to more of a long ball deal, as opposed to some of these teams back in the 90s who had like 6 guys batting over 300. Now you're
Mark Reynolds
one guy.
Mark Reynolds would strike out in a season about as many times as Tony Gwynn struck out in his whole career.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So
what does this have to do with preaching, Dave?
Go with me.
Okay.
There's some players that step up and you can tell they're trying to, just every time they want to hit a home run. That's all they're trying to do.
Yeah.
And the strikeouts are going to add up. And there's debates on whether or not that's actually helpful.
Sure.
Most of those guys wind up not having very long careers. But then there's some people who get up to the plate and it's like, I'm not trying to hit a home run. If I hit a home run, great. I just want to get on base.
Yep.
I want to have a good on base percentage. Could we say similar thing? Like if you're packing yourself away 15, 20 hours because I want to hit a home run every single sermon, I can't miss anything, I have to say everything that needs to be said. Is it possible to say like, you're probably going to strike out? If not in your preaching more often in other areas of ministry, isn't just getting a base hit sometimes good enough?
It's good enough for me. I mean, there's so many weeks where, I come home from church and Molly will say, how'd you think it went? And I'll go, I got a base hit. I got on base, or I moved the chains. Either way, it's a sports analogy.
Yeah.
We moved it forward. I also think any preacher who thinks I need to hit a home run by saying everything is guaranteeing they're going to strike out. So there does become this law of diminishing returns where it's like at some point, like all this extra preparation isn't making the sermon that much better. And so, but yeah, anyone living with that pressure of I got to hit a home run every week is like, well, good luck, because that's a pretty hard thing to do.
See, I made the connection.
Yeah, good job.
One of the things in the training day that you said, which perked up my ears, and I'm sure it perked up others, is I'm just trying to prepare a sermon that's good enough. Now, in the context of that entire training day, it's good enough to be faithful to all of the things that I say I want to be faithful to. That was the context. But like,
I want it to be solid. I want it to be insightful. I want it to be true. I want it to be helpful. But it doesn't have to be, wow, I remember every word of that, or that's the greatest sermon I've ever heard. I'm not aiming at that.
You are human, and so
very much so.
There's been several times where I would like, hey man, what's going on? And you're like, it was just a really busy week. Like I'm going to wind up spending Friday and some of Saturday. The sermon just got pushed to the back end. And so like that's inevitable, even if you have a process that you like, because you are trying to be faithful to the other areas of ministry and not just trying to sock yourself away and preach a sermon, right?
Yeah, that happens sometimes. I think for a number of pastors I interact with through the Preaching Lab cohorts, it happens all the time. And it's frequent and it's normal. And it's like, whereas for me, that might happen once or twice a year. For a lot of guys, it's like it happens once or twice a year that they aren't preparing last minute. And so a lot of this is really trying to say, well, what are some ways there's always going to be extra busy weeks, extra busy stuff, things you didn't plan for, things you didn't prepare. That's going to happen. But how do you more often than not have predictable, good practices, rhythms, routines that help you to prepare really great sermons as efficiently as possible? That's what we're aiming at. If you want to make my wife angry, just tell her, oh, Luke only works one day a week. Boy, she will be fighting mad if she hears you say that. But that's what a lot of people think. They think, well, all we do is preach. But you know the truth. I know the truth. We do so much more than preach. We visit people in the hospital. We train leaders. We manage staff. We handle all sorts of unplanned things that we didn't see coming. We do all kinds of stuff in ministry. And in the end, we still have this oral exam every Sunday called a sermon that we've got to put together. And for a lot of us, we're trying to put together in all the nooks and crannies, and it gets squeezed out and it gets overwhelming. And so in this training day, we're talking about how to prepare a sermon in 8 hours or less. We want to give it maximum effort and be efficient as possible in the process so that we can be totally faithful to the preaching ministry and handling the word the way God wants us to, and also faithful to all the other stuff that we've got to do. How do we prepare a sermon in 8 hours or less? That's what we're talking about in this training day.
I think somehow I'm actually saving more in less time. So it was just a really great experience. It was fun.
I really haven't had that much feedback in my preaching.
Man, what a great set of tools that I was given.
All the aspects of prep were included.
More focused sermon prep and study time. My messages feel more coherent and more gospel focused.
There were things that I was doing well that he would encourage and help me refine.
The whole sermon prep process and getting to do this has become more fun.
I thought the content of this Preaching Lab was really great.
The curriculum and the content and the videos and the online course.
Really enjoyed the content. It helped sharpen me in certain areas.
I thought the videos that you did were really helpful.
The videos and just how intentional they were have been super helpful.
The content was incredibly helpful.
My kind of main goal was to try to get my sermon time down. My average sermon time was clocking in at 50 minutes and 56 seconds. In the week since this cohort began, clocking in at 44 minutes and 1 second. Past Sunday, I got under 40 minutes for the first time all year.
It was just helpful to look at the sermon and hear you offer feedback that was helpful for my own sermon.
You're with other pastors from across the country that what you find out is they're walking through a lot of the same things that you are, trying to get better, doing what God has called them to do.
It was great to connect with other preachers from around the country and be able to learn from them as well. And
just a really intentional time to be around some like-minded people, good ideas, and just remind myself of what's important. Luke just did a good job of really providing space for that.
The practical advice helped me grow in my abilities and a greater level of confidence when I preach.
Luke would watch our sermons. He would give feedback with the things that we can continue to grow on, things that I wasn't even noticing because they were just habits of mine in preaching.
If you're looking to improve in your preaching, then this is for you. This won't be a waste of your time.
I would absolutely recommend the Preaching Lab to anybody who's looking to grow in the art and craft of preaching.
I highly recommend the Preaching Lab to anyone who preaches and teaches the Bible.
I definitely recommend this to other people. In fact, I already have.
Highly recommending this to others, and just want to say thank you again for your investment in us. This has been life-changing for me. Thank you.
So what this episode is going to turn out to be is we're not just going to rehash what we did on the training day. That training day is there. It's available, faithfulandfruitful.com/training days.
Yeah, and for people who are interested in that, part of what I do is I walk through like hour by hour. If I was going to try to do it in 8 hours, what would I do the first hour? What would I do the second hour? What would I do the third hour? And so I think that's really helpful. And even for people who aren't necessarily trying to do it in 8 hours or less, I think there's a really interesting thought exercise, which is to say, what might I learn about my preparation process if I tried to do it that quickly? Like maybe I might find, oh, I'm actually spending too much time on this or this or this. So yeah, we would commend that resource to you. We're not going to rehash it here, but
what this is going to be is some of the more just discussions on the nuances, maybe some of the a complementary resource to that. So and there might, if you love your preaching process already, that's fantastic. You might be able to take one or two things from this discussion that really amplifies and complements it. So the first thing, we have an entire episode on a preaching calendar. Maybe we'll do another episode because that was back in season 1. It's been a few years now. But how do you think of the preaching calendar in specific relation to efficient sermon prep?
It's one of the key pieces. Like I would say it's such a foundational part of having efficient sermon prep, because what a preaching calendar is doing is it's saying, I know basically the passages or the topics that I'm preaching about 6 to 12 months in advance. And the reason that helps with the week to week sermon preparation efficiency is because if I know stuff is coming, then I always kind of in the background have on my radar, oh, there's a resource related to that. I'm preaching on that in a few months. There's an illustration that would relate to that. Like there's a sermon illustration I'm going to use next week that at some point, probably 4 months ago, I came across and went, I know that on that week, I'm going to use that illustration at that part of the sermon. And I know exactly, right? And that happened. So now I'm not, this coming week as I prepare that sermon, I'm not going, gosh, what's an illustration that I could use for this thing? Like I already know it. And so that doesn't happen all the time. But when you have a sermon calendar in advance, enough of that happens that it does save you time week to week. You know what's coming. You're able to read ahead. You're able to do some preparation. You're able to dig a deeper well so that when it comes time to draw water week to week, you've got water there to draw.
What is the current method that you're using for socking away those ideas, for socking away articles? I know you've used Evernote in the past. I know that that's something that a lot of people are curious about.
Yeah, everyone asks me about this.
How do you organize your stuff?
Yeah, I used to use Evernote, and then I just started feeling like Evernote stunk. Like these things kept popping up asking me to pay for more stuff, and I wasn't getting much value out of it. So I switched over to Notion. I use Notion. It's free right now, and which I like that. That's the right price point for me. I'm kind of cheap that way. The thing I would say about Notion is when I first was learning about Notion is like endlessly tinkerable. You can just tinker with it forever. And there's all these customized things. And I am the kind of person that's tempted to do that. So I just had to resolve, I'm going to use this in the most basic way possible. So that's what I'm using now. I know plenty of people who use just the native Notes app on their phone, or they use an ongoing document in Google Docs. But I think some sort of way, especially right now electronically, since so much of the content you run into has some sort of, electronic thing, or even if it's something that I experience like in my life, I can still write a note about it, or I can take a picture of something and then put it in there. So that's what I'm using now. But
do you have
I
just
feel like,
one long running note in Notion or one long running document, or are you like piecing them together? I mean, you don't have to get into too much detail.
No, I don't mind that. So I have really the two that interplay the most in this conversation would be at the beginning of the year, I create a table, and the table basically has a page for each of the sermons I'm going to do. So I just put out, I put all the sermons I'm going to do in there. And so if I have a specific idea related to a specific sermon, I'll just click on that one and put it in there. And then that might be months ahead, but when I get to it in a few months and I look at it and go, oh, and it reminds me, oh yeah, that was that thing here. The other thing I do is I have it's a table with each page that I'll click, put a link in there to a new page for each thing. That's how Notion works for illustrations. And so same thing. Each illustration idea I have just becomes a new thing on that table. And that's when it's less of like, okay, I know I'm going to use this illustration here in this specific place, and more just, that's an interesting idea for an illustration, and I'm just going to catalog it. And so then there are times when I feel stuck, or when I'm just thinking about stuff, and I'll just look through that and scroll through that and go, oh yeah, this would work, or oh, that doesn't really work, or oh, that makes me think of this other thing. So that's how I catalog that.
The thing I love about having the catalog in general in something that's easy to scroll, it's just easier to respond to something than it is to create something from scratch. We have the sermon illustration library on our site, and I was asking different preachers, like, how are you using it? The majority came back saying, I might not use something word for word or the exact thing, but it just gets the juices flowing. Yeah. It just gets me thinking in a direction,
sure,
which that's really valuable when you're trying to be efficient, because there's nothing worse than just sitting and having no thoughts cross your brain. Something that there's a local radio sports talk show host here. He's a former NFL player. His name's Ron Wolfley. And he always makes this statement. He always says something about, when you do something for the first time, it means this. When you do something for the second time, when you do something for the third time, here's what it actually means. I was like, I always found myself trying to remember what it is. So I was like, will ChatGPT remember it if I tell it to remember it, right? Like if I have an illustration and I want it to remember it, I don't want it to forget. If I have a story, if I inputted something, I want you to remember this. So 4 months ago, I said, I want you to remember this always. So I was like,
okay,
did it remember it?
So you typed in whatever the phrase was?
What the phrase
you
was.
Said,
I used ChatGPT to find it.
I want you to remember this always. And then you put it in.
Yeah, so we're talking about finding things. And so I was like, okay, let's see if it did it. I just said, what was the Ron Wolfley quote we talked about before? It was, 1's a point, 2's a trend, 3 is a pattern. So it remembered it.
That was it?
That was it.
Wow, good job.
Maybe that's
ChatGPT for the win.
Yeah, right? Maybe that's one of those things you can start experimenting with.
Well, and to your point, that is what is so helpful about these electronic tools now, is you don't always remember exactly, where did I read that? Where did I see that? But when you have that search capability, it helps you recall it and brings it to the surface. And all of that helps you do it more efficiently.
Seth, who's on staff here, we were recording something, a little project we're doing about showing sermon process. And he says, I only do Kindle now because it just is so helpful to find the things when I'm searching for them. Like I can find them so much more quickly. And there is something to holding a book, but I mean, it is great to be able to just say, where did he say that? And be able to find it.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's how you categorize and that's how you sort. So preaching calendar, capturing ideas ahead of time, reading ahead of time, getting more into the weekly, getting more into, I have to do this every single week. What are some of the things that help with efficiency there?
One of the things is you have to develop consistent weekly rhythms and schedule. And I think the process of doing an ideal week calendar is really helpful here. So this is one of the early training days we did, was on developing your ideal week. And that always feels funny because it's like, well, an ideal week. When do you ever have an ideal week? And the answer is never. But the process of developing an ideal week is really trying to say, what are the most important things that I have to devote time to? When am I going to be strategic about devoting that time? Well, certainly for anyone who's a regular preacher, preparing the message would be one of the most important things. It would be, what Stephen Covey would call a big rock that has to go in first. And so that process of saying, okay, here's when I do this. Here's when I set this time aside. And if you were to open up my calendar, I mean, what you would see is I have appointments that are just recurring appointments every week in the same slots for sermon prep. And that way I'm not on any given week going, well, when am I going to do this? Well, when am I going to do that? Now, it might happen where you go, oh, this particular week I took a little vacation, or this particular week I was at this event. And so it had to be rearranged. But it's easier to rearrange something than it is to build it from scratch every single week. So if you just want to get more efficient, you develop a kind of rhythm there. So it's like, okay, Mondays, I always do this part of my process. Wednesdays, I always do this part of the process. Thursdays, I always do this part of the process. And then actually put it on your calendar, make an appointment with yourself. You're thinking through in that process, when am I at my best in terms of my energy? When am I at my best with certain kinds of work and creativity? Like for me, Monday would be a good day to get a lot of input. Like that would be a good day to listen to things and read things. It wouldn't be my most creative day because I'm coming off of Sunday and I'm a little bit more tired. I'm going to need a couple of days before I'm going to have the creative juices, but that doesn't mean I can't still do part of the process on Monday. So you're just thinking through those sorts of rhythms and developing some consistency there in the process.
I'm trying to find it. We were talking about how to protect your time during the training day. And one of the preachers that was active in the chat was really, really active during the entire recording. But one of the things you've said, and you said this in the busyness in ministry episode, I will tell people like, hey, I'd love to get together. I actually already have an appointment in my calendar. I'm not able to do that. And then, of course, well, what are you doing? Like nobody asked
no one
that.
asks, yeah.
But if you did were to say it was like, it's an appointment with the Lord. Like it's to do this particular thing. And one of the guys goes, I just straight up tell people I'm sermon planning. He's like he says, I make sure that my staff knows in this box, like that's what I'm doing. I don't want to be interrupted when I'm doing this particular thing.
I don't know why, but I think maybe I do know why. I think it's because as pastors, we're trying to be servant-hearted. We're trying to be generous. We're trying to be kind and selfless. And so if someone, if your normal sermon prep time is on Wednesday morning or on Thursday morning and someone says, Pastor, can we meet? Pastor, can I come by? Pastor, I have something important I need to talk about. We want to serve them. And very often it's not an actual emergency. Very often it's something that they want to talk Wednesday morning. It actually could wait till Wednesday afternoon, or it could wait till next Monday. But in our desire to be accommodating, we accommodate it. And then what we just did is we threw off our whole week, we threw off our whole rhythm, and now we're trying to like fill in the gaps and prepare a sermon. And it's like going, okay, so out of your love for this one person, which is really good. It's, Jesus talks about the person who left the 99 to, the shepherd who left the 91 to love the one. Okay. So you're loving the one in that moment, but now are the 99 suffering because you prepared a half-baked message that you did in the leftovers and the nooks and crannies of your week and your time because you actually let the whole thing get upended by this thing that actually wasn't in the end a real emergency. So I'm not sure that that's the most loving thing for your church. I think it's actually possible more often than not to love the 99 by keeping your sermon prep time in the block you put it in, and also to love the one who probably has more flexibility than they're letting on, and you can actually still get your time with them. So I think that's an important thing. The other thing pastors have to accept is there are times where I'm not going to be able to meet this person's need. And sometimes if we're honest, what we realize is people don't want help, what they want us. Mm-hmm. And we have to be able to go, if you would like help with this, if you have a true emergency and you need someone to help you with this, I can get you help. It's just I can't be the one to do it right now. And then the ball's in their court. And if they say, well, then never mind, then okay. That's their decision. But having those consistent blocks and then not canceling with yourself. Like we hate it when people cancel on us, right? You show up at the coffee shop and you get a text like, oh, sorry, I'm not going to make it. This thing came up. And you're like, what the heck? But we do it to ourselves all the time when we cancel on ourselves with distractions online, or we cancel with ourselves by answering the phone when it rings during our prep time, or we cancel on ourselves. I mean, we do it all the time. And so we'd have to stop doing that.
I made the connection for the baseball. So
Okay.
I'll make the connection.
Are we going
here.
into the arts now?
No,
or
we're not going.
We're sticking with baseball.
No, neither. It's another
okay.
connection.
Great.
When you are learning how to price out your different products and services, whatever type of business, there was someone who said, I don't know who said it first, but your price is whatever you can say without cracking a smile, right?
Okay.
Like whatever you can take seriously. Like if you crack a smile, then you're charging too much.
Okay.
But if it's just underneath that, it's like if you can say it confidently and not crack a smile, that's your price.
Okay.
So it's kind of preparing ahead of time confidence to say like this, like I'm not going to compromise on this. This is my boundary for pricing. I think it's helpful to rehearse, like when somebody asks you the question, hey, do you have time to do this? And if they even press, to have something rehearsed that you feel confident in saying, that you're not going to, proverbially crack a smile, but like, no, I have conviction. I feel confident in this answer, and even practicing it rolling off your tongue so that when somebody, especially if you're trying to do this practice for the first time and you really want to install some boundaries and you really do want to protect your time, rehearse it, let it roll off your tongue. Make sure that you feel comfortable with the words that you're using, and then begin trying those out, because you've trained people that they can have your time whenever they want it. And now it's going to be uncomfortable telling them you can no longer have my time whenever you want it, but here's what you can have. Here's the time that is available. And if you practice ahead of time, it's going to give you confidence to stick by it when it actually comes into play. Did I make the connection?
Yeah, that's good advice.
All right. Score one. Okay, so you've got your weekly rhythms and you've got your weekly timing, but then you've got your process. And so the one is about timing, your weekly schedule and rhythms. This one is slightly different when it's actually your process.
Every preacher should be able to explain their process. So that's part of what I do in the 8-hour sermon prep training day, is explain, here's the steps I take. But I just would say, for whoever's listening, figure out what are the steps you take. And if you don't take the same steps every time, it'd be worth asking, why not? Why? Like sometimes you read the text in this translation and sometimes you don't. Well, why? And I think just to say, here's the process I follow and here's what I do, and it's consistent and I'm not starting from scratch. And it's like, if I just had a template and I was just working through it, that's the value of the sermon architecture tool. It's just to say, this is what I do. This is how I do it, right? I think about an NFL quarterback. So now here I'm going with the sports. Ooh. I assume I've never watched an NFL quarterback prepare for a week. It would be like one of my bucket lists. If I ever had the chance to just follow an NFL quarterback around for a week, it would be like the greatest thing ever. I'm assuming that an NFL quarterback follows the same process every week. They have a different opponent every week. Different opponents require different levels of, okay, this kind of play needs to get installed, or these kinds of things need to happen, or but the same process. It's probably the same process of watching film, the same process of learning the new plays, the same process of watching the film from practices. I mean, it's the same thing every time. If an NFL quarterback was having to week to week go, what do I do now? That would be an overwhelming process. And so I think a preacher is a little bit like an NFL quarterback in that way. You have this weekly, there's a game Sunday, it's coming, here it comes, you know it's coming. The text is different, but the process to prepare the sermon shouldn't be different. And so just whatever your process is, stick with it. Don't start over every week.
Someone's going to have to suffer the consequences. And I mean, that's why a lot of quarterbacks don't last in the league, because they either don't have a process or they do and they don't stick to it. But then you've got a lot of people who maybe lack particular talent. They don't have the skills that maybe you see other people have. But they're able to last because they've got a process and they're diligent with it. And I mean, sticking with the football, like that's Kurt Warner, right? Like the guy was out of the league, but the dude had a process to study the game, and he became a student of the game and became a Hall of Famer. Now,
well, and I'm a Broncos fan, right? You're a Cardinals fan, so you pull out your Cardinals.
Pull out my Hall of Famer
as a Broncos fan. I mean, I pull out Peyton Manning and
yeah.
go. Peyton Manning arguably was one of the worst quarterbacks physically in the last couple of years of his career. And yet he was still great because he had great preparation.
Yeah.
And that when you think Peyton Manning is a quarterback, you think preparation. And so, again, he didn't get that way by every week going, I wonder how I'm going to prepare for this week's game. No, he had a consistent rhythm, consistent pattern, and preachers should do the same thing.
I think you should have done that impression with a little bit more of a twang. I'll let it go for now.
Okay,
Next
okay.
time you do a Peyton impression, twang, please. So one of the things that I appreciate about you, but I could also see becoming a real temptation, is doing everything in a silo, doing everything by yourself. It was said by one entrepreneur that don't hire employees. People are the worst. And so I held off on hiring employees because I was like, yeah, people are the worst. And then when I hired the right employee, I was like, oh my gosh, people are the best. Like I become so much better when
Sure.
I'm around them and I'm learning from them. So it would be easy to stay in a silo, be like, all these people are interrupting my sermon prep process, but maybe be intentional about inviting people into the process, inviting people into your rhythms, inviting people into the sermon prep. Like, how do you think about that?
There might be people for whom like they just have to do this whole thing by themselves. Like I'm assuming that that's a possibility. For me though, I actually find that one of the keys to efficiency is to create some environment where I'm talking it through with other people. And some of that is I'm more of an auditory learner, helping, me saying things, me listening to other people talk about it does help me internalize the things we're talking about and thinking about. I remember it better. And so, I've done this a number of different ways. We've talked on the last few episodes about a sermon insight meeting. This is where on a Wednesday afternoon, whoever's preaching will come with a group of people and say, here's where I think I'm going with this. Help me think through how to apply it. What are the implications? What are the pushback? What are the arguments that are going to come up? What are the reasons we resist this? All the stuff we've been talking about in some of the last few episodes. Well, just like that 45 minutes to an hour of conversation, I think if I was trying to do that by myself, it would probably take 2 hours. So even though it's like on the surface, it seems less efficient because there's parts of that meeting that are just rambling and people are saying stuff like, I don't think I'm not going to use that. I'm not going to use that. But actually on the whole, it's a time saver. So I think that's something that preachers should consider is, are there strategic moments in the preparation process where if I brought some other people in to help me with the editing, to help me with the application, to help me with ideas, to help me with creativity, would that time investment actually save me time in the long run?
Let's go into a different area for this connection. Let's go into music. Billy Corgan of the Smashing Pumpkins, he was asked about writing songs and what role is AI playing in writing songs. And he had a really interesting take. He said back in the 90s, we would have a group of maybe 40 people and they would go off and they would write different hooks and they would do different loops and they'd come back and sort of audition each one. And Billy would be like, oh, I really like that. Let's take that. I really like that. Let's take that. AI has given him a different discernment process. He said it was a discernment process at that point, but we've short-circuited the process now using AI to where I don't necessarily have to have all those 40 people. I still like doing that. I still want to do that, but it's just another tool in the toolbox. And so when you talk about bringing other people into the process, it really winds up becoming that discernment process. You're getting all these different inputs that you would maybe not have if you weren't bringing other people in, and you get to discern. And one of the things I like about doing those things, like, yes, maybe there are things we're talking about that aren't necessarily helpful at all, but I do see it as building relationships as well, and people being bought into the process and feeling like they've got skin in the game and feeling like, hey, even if this doesn't get used, like, I got to participate in something. And I don't look at that as manipulation. I look at that as leadership. Like, yes, I want you to be a part of the process. And so you could be tempted to just do the discernment process by yourself or with AI. But if you actually take the process to bring people in, I think we have a different thing to steward here, is that we're stewarding relationships and we're stewarding, it's not a family when it's your staff. It is a staff because you can't get fired from a family, but we do want to make sure that we're all on the same page. And I think it's just another way of doing that. It's not a waste of time, even if you walk out saying, well, I didn't really get anything out of that.
Yeah. What's so cool about that meeting is it's not only saving me time on the sermon prep side, it's also doing other things as a leader, as a staff member. So like, it's giving me time with other people that I wouldn't necessarily, like, there is no overlap for us to work on a specific project together. But when we're kind of working on this sermon together, like, oh, that gives us something to do. It gives them more insight into my thinking. It gives us more of time together and moments together that we might not have otherwise. And so it does a lot of really cool things. It also, I mean, just from a leadership perspective, one of the things it does is, believe it or not everybody always loves everything the preacher says. And so sometimes people will go, I didn't like that, or I didn't understand that. Well, if that ever makes it to some of the people that were in that sermon insight meeting, they have more insight into, oh, well, here's what I think he meant by that, or here's how I know you're saying that. I'm pretty sure that's not what he intended, because I was in the meeting when I heard him talking through some of those things. So there are other benefits to the sermon insight meeting or a group project part of this, but it certainly helps on the efficiency side.
The last thing that we'll talk about in this episode is making deadlines and setting limits. You strike me as somebody that's fairly easy to make deadlines and set limits and know those. So number one, if that's not true, then I would love to know how you've done that, because I get that perception. But number two, how do you advise somebody to do those things? And, I think some of it's just discipline, self-discipline, but is there more to it than just that?
Well, most people have the experience of like working really well under a deadline. Like, oh man, this thing's due. I got to get it done. It's got to go. Wham, like I get it done. The real art becomes, can you work well under an artificial deadline? And if you can hold the line on that, then you have all of that same benefit of like, oh, I got to get this done, but it's actually in advance, right? Like, I don't want to be, if possible, like putting together my message Sunday morning. Like, there have been times where, because of, this person was scheduled to preach and they called in sick, and now I've got to put this thing, like, there's times where that's had to happen, but that's not my best sermons, and I don't want that to be the case. So that becomes the trick. It's interesting with my son right now is, he's 9 years old, and Molly and I have given him a challenge. He wants to be a better baseball player, and so we've given him a challenge around, taking a certain number of swings every day and that sort of a thing. And one of the things I say to him almost every time before he goes out is I say, hey, buddy, and now he'll like, I'll start it and he'll finish it, but I'll say, hey, successful people do consistently when no one's watching what ordinary people do occasionally and only with an audience. And because I don't really care that much if he's a great hitter. I do care that he's the kind of person that will do the right thing and work hard and be diligent consistently and when no one else is around. And so I'm trying to instill that kind of discipline. As pastors, we should have the Holy Spirit, and we should have increasing and growing self-control to where we can say, all right, by this point in the week, I'm done with this part. By this point in the week, I'm done with this part. Sometimes it helps if other people are depending on it, where you go, okay, the small groups person needs this message done by this time so they can write follow-up group questions, or the tech person needs this done by this time so they can create the slides. So if that's helpful, I think that is a resource worth using. But one of the things I talk about a lot, I love the idea of the Parkinson's law. Parkinson's law is the idea that work expands or contracts to fill the amount of time you allow for it. So if you give yourself all week, it'll take all week. If you give yourself till Thursday at noon, it'll take till Thursday at noon. So creating those artificial deadlines, sticking with them, that is one of the ways to be more efficient.
Do you think Peyton Manning has some artificial deadlines, and that's how he became great?
He probably did.
He strikes me as the type of person that would have that sort of thing going for him.
Yeah.
So like I said, this episode was a little bit more on the periphery of efficient sermon prep, the mechanics, the tactical, the more practical. That's what we covered in the training day. That's certainly available for you. But hopefully in this episode, it gives you a little bit more complementary information, and maybe pick one area. I think the temptation that I felt early on, just starting to learn was, I got to do all this stuff. And it was really freeing to decide, I'm just going to try and do one thing. If I can do one of these things really well, I think that will go well for me. And then I can add more over time. So maybe just look at these. We've got a calendar. Maybe that's where you need to spend your time. Reading ahead and capturing ideas, developing a system for that. Putting out a weekly or an ideal weekly schedule. If you were to have an ideal week, what would it look like? And what would you kind of shoot for? What would your actual process be? And if your description of your process is, I have no process, well, that's probably a really good place to start, is identifying, here is what I'm going to try for the first time, and then tweak it. I love the phrase that you use in ministry, is like, this is what we're doing for now. Your process doesn't have to be established. This is the process here for, no, this is what I'm doing for now. And then put it under the microscope and be willing to change and, bring other people into it. I know you've said, I'm fascinated to see how other guys put their sermons together. I'm not going to use it, but I'm fascinated to see it. Well, look at what other people are doing.
And you might use it.
Talk it out with others and then make deadlines and set limits. That was the list we had. Anything else you want to add to the conversation?
You have to get more efficient. You just have to. This is not optional for your enjoyment, for your longevity. You have to be able to do this. And I realize not everyone's wired the same. Not everyone's built like me. Some people literally have ADHD, and that changes the whole story in terms of how you would prepare a message like this. And so you have to know yourself and play around and experiment. But the main thing I'd say is develop a plan, develop purpose. Don't just wing it. Don't just rebuild it every week. Have some sort of strategy. If you have a strategy, you can always deviate from it. But I'd rather deviate from a consistent strategy because I have to, than each week having to go, well, what am I going to do this week? And that's the main thing. I just want to help people not be in that situation. That sounds terrible.
If you're a bivocational pastor, if you've been doing that for any number of time, I want to go ahead and ask you to send a message, info@faithfulandfruitful.com, and maybe just share a bullet list of 1, 3, maybe 5 things that have been really helpful for you. I realize
those guys have to be efficient.
They have to be efficient. There were several bivocational preachers on the training day, and it's just a completely different dynamic.
That's a great example of Parkinson's law.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't have as much time to prepare. So guess what? It doesn't take me as much time to prepare. Whereas the guys who it's like, well, I could kind of waste a day doing a bunch of this, and actually half of it's tinkering around online. That's not very efficient. That's not very good stewardship. I guess good for you that you get to waste that time, but that's not what any of us want to do.
If you're bivocational, send an email to us just with some bullet points of this is what I've done that has really been helpful, making the most of time. I found that this practice has worked very well, or I've seen it work well with other guys who are in the same situation. I would love to hear that. That's one thing that I know there's a lot of bivocational preachers that are interacting with what we do at Faithful and Fruitful. And I know that a lot of it is not necessarily geared towards you, though I've been encouraged to hear plenty of people have found it helpful. But I would love to hear specifically from you. Other than that, thanks for listening to this episode. I hope it was helpful and complimentary, like we said. That training day is available at faithfulandfruitful.com if you want the more mechanical and practical aspect of it. But yeah, this has been fun. I honestly took a little bit more liberty with my illustrations and my connections.
I'm happy you did, Dave. It helps everyone get to know you a little bit better. By the way, I think this has come up, but we should tell everyone these episodes are now on YouTube. Woo! And so if you want to see Dave's eyes light up when he talks about Kurt Warner, tune into YouTube. You'll like it over there. So
thanks for listening. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.